Okay, I'm just going to go through then this water use calculator in a little bit more detail than I did with the other ones there. So there is some, if I can get at the tab, there is some instructions on the first tab. So enable your macros, that should be just done immediately, whether you're using SI or IP units, and whether it's a LEED for neighbourhood development, which it won't be in your cases unless you're hiding something from me. And then you basically will go through it, but you add flush and flow tables in the following tabs, and then it will basically calculate how much water you have reduced from the baseline. So this calculator, this spreadsheet, calculates both the baseline case, so that's looking at a kind of a just code compliant water use case, and it is based on these assumptions and these defaults per day. So these go into the calculation of the baseline. And I suppose it's a bit like deep or anything, you know, you're doing a kind of average baseline typical scenario, and your design is trying to improve beyond that, and it's the percentage improvement in terms of water use that's being measured here. So that's just the first tab of instructions, and then the second tab goes into just the different groups. Now up here would be, you could put in your room or your unit number or whatever it is, your building number, your building block, your type of building, whatever it is, whatever way you order. You'd need to do one of these where if you've got like vastly different amounts of people, like if you've got anything that's kind of complex in terms of frequency of use or numbers of people or types of people, then you'd need to actually do one of these for each. But otherwise the idea is that they should try and capture all of the people and all of the fixtures and the fittings. So you put in the numbers down here of male and female employees. So let's say if it was, oh sorry, no, it's up here. I find this, sometimes this to me is where you should be putting it in, but it's actually this kind of slightly very grayed out part here. So let's say it was a school and you had 14 members of staff and you had 180 students. It will automatically do a gender split of 50-50 unless you put in unless you click that and you actually put in another gender ratio there. I think you can put it in. Oh, maybe you can't. Maybe it's just clicking the non-default. Oh yeah, that's what you need to do. Oh, let's get rid of my things. So you need to put in let's say 7 and 3 or whatever it was, and it will do the percentage for you. So if you're just using the default as we had there, then you're putting up here 14 and it will do the automatic 50-50 split. That's just related to urinal use, essentially, is why they need to know that. And you also would tick here if you have gender neutral or ADA restrooms, as in those are urinals. So because it's making a lot of assumptions about urinal use, so if you click that, it will know that you are including those gender neutral, and it'll affect the calculation somewhere in the background. Don't ask me how. I haven't chased it up to that degree, but I know that if you click that, then it will apply that ratio. So if you the next box down then is about the percentage of males expected to use the restroom. If that's, we can actually see the difference. So let's say we have 0. Let's say we've got no urinals. It's a school and it's just all toilets. And if it's a school, there won't be 365 days of use. Let's say it's about 180 roughly. And then this is your design case. So this is the low flush and the full flush for anything that does flush. So that's a toilet only, unless you've got something else that's flushing. So if we just take like, I just got a typical this one, yeah. Here on your product, so this is where you have to look up the product data sheet. And if you look here, you should have the flush rate. Yeah, so it's a dual flush, so it's got 4 to 2.6 flush rate, and it'll also give the capacity down here as 4. So back to our spreadsheet, so we can put in the low flush is 2.6 and the full flush is 4, and then this is the LEED weighted average flush rate. Looking at those, the combination of those, I suppose if you didn't have let's see what happens if you didn't have a low flush and you just had, let's say, a full flush. It's actually a different flush rate that would be used there. So low flush, full flush. Then what you need to do is put that, it was 2.6, that's why it's different. That what you do is put that number, the weighted average flush rate needs to go down into the here 0.07 for all the WCs. You can have an ID number, we don't need to fill that in for here, whether it's a male or a female. So this goes 3, and then the rest is, I think, the fixture type. Yeah, you can, so it's a dual flush. And if you had in a conventional water closet or a low flush or a composting, etc., so it's dual flush, and then it does basically the rest for you there. You see it's beginning to fill out some of these, and it's using all the baseline and the fault. So then okay, then the one thing I forgot, so percentage of occupants, so this would be, so 100% of occupants are using those, although it should, I think that needs to add up to, oh yes, so if you had 2 different types of this brand of male toilet, for example, then you would do 50% for each, if or 2 different specifications, then you'd need to put them in each, but that value for all of the males, for example, would need to add up to 100. That's what it's basically telling you in there. So from that, we've calculated the baseline and the design case, which is a good bit. It looks like it's almost 50% lower there. And then if there's other fixtures, so do you have, so in those bathrooms you have faucets, etc. What the design flow rate again is from the manufacturers. So we can look at the flow rates here. Again, typical, so it's 3.7 litres. Where did I go? So we can put in, and that's litres per minute, just make sure that your units are the same. And I think that's all. Oh yeah, percentage again of occupants. So, and then if we had one in a kitchen, for example, or whatever it is, you'd get another default, and I think I had another tap picked out. 5 litres a minute. So although this looks complicated, there isn't actually that much to fill in. And again, if you've got loads of different fixtures and fittings, you add the rows, and then you go to the summary tab along, and it will give you your baseline consumption and your design consumption, and then the percentage water use reduction. The prerequisite for this, I think, is 20%, so you'd get some points above that, and you need to see if you can at least hit the prerequisite. And if you're not, so let's see what making this dual flush, let's see what making this a low flush would do. We were roughly at 29%, weren't we? I wonder, does it make, no, makes no difference, which is probably because of this value, because if you had a low flush, I wonder if we just get rid of that, what happens? I would have thought that would have, oh, I didn't update it here. Now, please be different. Yay. Wow, that's a huge difference. Almost double. So yeah, you'd be playing around with that to see what extra points you could get as you go through it. So what you need for this are all your, and sorry, just to note as well, just trying to move this bloody thing, that this is for design and construction, and there is another tab for operations and maintenance, but you are unlikely to be using that in your projects. So you could do, I think you can do, no you can't, so you do, I was about to say you can copy, but you'd have to do a new one of these if it was a different building block, but if you have, you should be doing this kind of per building, I suppose. So if you had, and it'll be difficult, I suppose, to do residential, you'd have to just put in the max number of, so if it's a 3-bed apartment, you'd put in 3 there, for example, and you'd have to just go with the default 50-50, you wouldn't know, for example. I wonder what doing that, yeah, it lowers it because it's assuming, I suppose, there's more. Oh, we didn't even put in urinals actually. So get a little bit of playing you can do with here. Conventional urinal, we forgot to put it in, although it doesn't have a flush. I wonder, does it have it here? No, you still put it in up here. Conventional 0.3, you know what that is. Is that value has changed now because we put in 100 there. Yeah, so they're connected. So it's about, there's some algorithm or some formula that's connecting the amount of people with the types of fixtures you have with urinal use in terms of water and frequency of use there, which is quite interesting in and of itself. And we're going to say 100% of our people. Yeah, so it does, I suppose, it went down slightly from when we had no urinal use at all. So when we had this 0 and no urinal, I think it was 48. So it's saying that obviously there's going to be more water used because you've got a urinal. So that's making sense, at least. Okay, that's the indoor water use calculator for your enjoyment.